Buckle up for a wild ride at Crestview Junior High, where 13-year-old Ethan Brooks, armed with a backpack so stuffed it's nicknamed the Math Fortress, stumbles into a showdown that'll leave you speechless. Picture a kid who's secretly a math wizard facing off against Miss Clara Thornton, a teacher with a ruler sharper than her tongue. Shocking secrets, hidden scars, and a calculus problem meant to crush him. Will Ethan's genius flip the script, or will he crash and burn? Watch to see the jaw-dropping twist. Like, subscribe, and share. New stories drop daily. Ethan Brooks, 13 and perpetually frazzled, sprinted down the hallway of Crestview Junior High, his backpack, the legendary Math Fortress, wobbling like a drunk giraffe on roller skates. Books, pencils, and a half-eaten granola bar jostled inside, threatening to burst the zipper. The spring 2025 bell screamed, "You're late, loser!" Ethan's sneakers squeaked as he skidded into Ms. Clara Thornton's math class, heart pounding like a jackhammer. "Mr. Brooks?" Miss Thornton's voice sliced through the air, cold as a popsicle in a snowstorm. Her ruler, her scepter of doom, tapped her desk. Thwack, thwack, like a metronome of misery. "Late again. Is your brain as tardy as your feet?" The class erupted in giggles. Jake Miller, the king of snark, mimed a slow-mo sprint, earning high fives. Ethan's cheeks burned hotter than a jalapeno. "Sorry, Ms. Thornton," he mumbled, clutching the Math Fortress like a life raft. "Bus broke down." "Excuses are like gum under desks, sticky and useless," she snapped, her gray eyes narrowing. "Sit. Now." Ethan froze, his body stiff. A dull ache pulsed across his lower back, a souvenir from last week's lesson with Miss Thornton's ruler. "Can I stand today, please?" His voice was a mouse squeak, barely audible. Miss Thornton's eyebrows launched into orbit. "Stand?" she mocked, her ruler pausing mid-thwack. "What's next, Brooks? A throne and a crown?" Jake snorted. "King Ethan, ruler of tardiness?" The class roared. Ethan's fingers dug into his backpack straps, the pain in his back screaming, "Don't sit! Don't sit!" "I can't sit," Ethan said, louder, his voice cracking but firm. "My back hurts." The room went graveyard silent. Miss Thornton's lips curled into a smile so cruel it could curdle milk. "You're back?" she said, her tone dripping sarcasm. "First the bus, now this. Did you wrestle a bear on your way here?" More laughter. Jake made a fake whimper, clutching his spine. Ethan's heart raced, but he stood his ground, trembling. "It's true," he whispered. Miss Thornton slammed her ruler on the desk. Crack, making everyone jump. "Enough," she barked. "If you're so special, let's test just how special you are." She marched to the digital whiteboard, erased the day's piddly algebra, and scribbled a beast of a calculus problem. Integrals twisting like snakes, exponents sneering like bullies. "This," she announced, her smile venomous, "is for my high school honors class. Solve it, Brooks. 5 minutes or it's detention city." Jake hooted. "He's gonna need a calculator the size of Jupiter," the class cackled. But Ethan stared at the board, his pulse slowing. Those squiggly symbols, they weren't monsters. They were old pals met in the quiet corners of Crestview Library, where he'd spent Tuesday nights wrestling calculus while his classmates battled video game bosses. Flashback. Ethan, a year ago, hunched over a library table, a calculus textbook splayed open. Dr. Samuel Carter, a professor with a beard like a wise wizard, peered over his shoulder. "That's a tricky integral, kid," he'd said, his eyes twinkling. "Mind if I join the party?" Ethan had tensed, expecting a lecture, but Dr. Carter pulled up a chair, sketching curves that danced like magic. "You're a pattern whisperer," he'd said. "Math loves you back." Since then, twice a week they tackled derivatives and integrals, Ethan's brain lighting up like a fireworks show. Back in the classroom, Ethan's classmates whispered bets. $10 he cries, Jake said, smirking. Amara Patel, a shy girl in the back, bit her lip, her eyes flicking to Ethan with something like hope. Ann Thornton leaned against her desk, arms crossed, her ruler dangling like a guillotine blade. 4 minutes left, she sang, her voice syrupy with smugness. Tick, tick, Brooks. Ethan's stomach twisted, but beneath the fear, a spark flickered. He knew this problem, a substitution integral. Tricky, but not impossible. His fingers twitched, itching for a marker. Could he do this? In front of everyone? 3 minutes, Ms. Thornton taunted, tapping her watch. Or are you planning to stand there like a statue? Jake chuckled, but his smirk faltered, sensing something off. Ethan took a shaky breath, his back throbbing, his pride stinging. He stepped toward the board, the math fortress slumping to the floor with a comedic thud, spilling a pencil that rolled like a runaway marble. Oops, Ethan muttered, scooping it up, earning a few snickers. Jake whispered, "Clumsy genius, huh?" Ethan grabbed a marker, its plastic cool against his sweaty palm. The whiteboard glowed, those integrals beckoning like a secret code. His heart pounded. You can do this. You can do this. Miss Thornton's ruler tapped again, slower, deliberate. Don't waste my time, Brooks, she said, her eyes glinting with something darker than disdain. Was it fear? Ethan's mind raced, connecting patterns from Dr. Carter's lessons. The problem wasn't just math, it was a trap, designed to crush him. But he wasn't just Ethan, the late kid with the goofy backpack. He was Ethan, the kid who taught himself calculus under a flickering library lamp. He pressed the marker to the board, the squeak slicing the silence. His hand moved, slow at first, then faster, numbers and symbols flowing like a river. Substitution, simplify, solve. The class held its breath, Jake's jaw dropping an inch. Amara leaned forward, her pencil frozen mid-doodle. Miss Thornton's ruler stopped tapping. Her smile wavered, just for a second. Ethan's marker danced, unraveling the problem piece by piece. He could feel her stare, heavy as a storm cloud, but he didn't look back. The pain in his back faded, the laughter dissolved. There was only the math, pure and perfect, a language that never lied. 2 minutes, Miss Thornton said, her voice tighter now, less certain. Ethan's hand flew, the board filling with neat, precise steps. He was close, so close. The final answer loomed, a single number that could change everything. But what was Ms. Thornton hiding? Why was she so desperate to see him fail? He underlined the answer, his chest heaving. The room was a vacuum. No sound but the faint hum of the whiteboard's glow. He turned, marker still in hand, to face Ms. Thornton's steely gaze. Well, she demanded, stepping forward, her ruler clutched like a weapon. Is that your masterpiece, Brooks? Ethan swallowed, his voice steady despite the tremor in his knees. It's correct, he said. Check it. Jake whistled low, breaking the spell. Dude. What? Ms. Thornton's face twitched, a crack in her icy facade. She marched to the board, scanning Ethan's work, her eyes darting faster, wider. This can't be, she muttered, her ruler trembling. The class buzzed, whispers rippling like static. Amara's eyes shone, a tiny smile tugging at her lips. Jake leaned back, his smirk gone, replaced by something like awe. Impossible! Ms. Thornton spun on Ethan, her voice a whip. Where did you steal this from? A phone? A cheat sheet? I didn't steal anything, Ethan said, his voice stronger now. I solved it. Liar, she shouted, snatching his solution paper from the desk and ripping it in half, the pieces fluttering like broken wings. Principal's office, now, for cheating and disrespect. Ethan's heart sank, but his feet stayed rooted. The torn paper lay at his feet, proof of his truth shredded. Jake's eyes met his, no longer mocking but confused. Amara's hand twitched, as if she wanted to speak. Miss Thornton pointed to the door, her ruler shaking. Out, Brooks. You're done. Ethan grabbed the math fortress, its weight grounding him. As he stepped into the hall, Miss Thornton's voice echoed behind him, sharp and desperate. This isn't over. But Ethan's mind was elsewhere, replaying the welts on his back, the secret he hadn't told. What was Miss Thornton so afraid of? And would his markers squeak on that board be the spark to burn her castle down? Or would he crumble under her glare? Ethan Brooks stood before the digital whiteboard, marker in hand, the squeak of his strokes slicing through Crestview Junior High's math classroom like a ninja's sword. The calculus problem, Ms. Clara Thornton's cruel trap, lay conquered, its integrals tamed by Ethan's steady hand. He underlined the final answer, a single glorious number, and turned to face the room, his heart thumping like a bass drum at a rock concert. The class was a frozen tundra, 25 pairs of eyes wide as saucers. Jake Miller, the self-proclaimed king of snark, whispered, "No way." Amara Patel, tucked in the back, gripped her pencil so tight it might have snapped. Ms. Thornton, her ruler dangling like a forgotten prop, stared at Ethan's work, her face twitching like she'd bitten a lemon. "Well," she snapped, stepping forward, her gray eyes glinting with fury, "is this your little magic trick, Brooks?" Ethan's knees wobbled, but his voice held firm. "It's correct, ma'am," he said. "You can check." "Check." Miss Thornton's laugh was sharp, like glass cracking. I'll check all right." She marched to the board, her ruler tapping her palm. Thwack, thwack, as she scanned Ethan's equations. Her frown deepened, her lips pursing tighter with every line. This is impossible," she muttered, her voice low, almost to herself. Ethan's classmates buzzed, whispers sparking like static. "He actually did it," one kid hissed. Amara's eyes shone, a tiny nod betraying her awe. Jake leaned back, his usual smirk replaced by a baffled squint. "Dude's a secret nerd," he mumbled, scratching his head. Ethan's mind flashed to his library nights with Dr. Samuel Carter, the professor who'd called him a pattern whisperer. "Integrals are just number hugs," Ethan had joked once, earning a chuckle from Dr. Carter. Now, standing here, he muttered it under his breath. Number hugs. And Jake, overhearing, blinked like Ethan had spoken alien. "Number what?" Jake snorted, loud enough to draw a giggle from nearby desks. "Bro, you're weird." Ms. Thornton spun around, her ruler slicing the air. "Silence!" she barked, her face red as a stop sign. She snatched Ethan's solution paper from the desk, holding it up like evidence in a crime show. "This," she said, her voice rising, "is a fraud. Where did you steal it, Brooks? A phone? A cheat sheet hidden in that ridiculous backpack?" I didn't steal anything," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the sweat trickling down his neck. "I solved it." "Liar!" Ms. Thornton's shout echoed, and with a dramatic rip she tore the paper in half, the pieces fluttering to the floor like ash from a dying fire. The class gasped, a collective inhale that sucked the air from the room. Amara's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. Jake's jaw dropped, his snark silenced for once. "Principal's office." Ms. Thornton pointed to the door, her ruler shaking like a leaf in a storm. "Now, Brooks, for cheating, disrespect, and wasting my time." Ethan's heart sank, the torn paper at his feet a gut punch. His proof, his truth, gone. But he squared his shoulders, grabbing the math fortress, which promptly betrayed him by snagging on a desk. Pencils spilled across the floor, rolling like tiny rebels escaping a coup. "Oops," Ethan muttered, scrambling to scoop them up, his cheeks flaming. Jake snickered, but his eyes held a flicker of something new. Confusion, maybe even respect. "Clumsy genius strikes again," Jake whispered, shaking his head. Ethan trudged out, Miss Thornton's heels clicking behind him like a predator's claws. The hallway's fluorescent lights buzzed, casting long shadows as they marched to Principal Margaret Evans' office. Ethan's back throbbed, the welts from Miss Thornton's ruler pulsing with every step. He hadn't told anyone, not his parents, not Dr. Carter. Who'd believe a kid over a teacher with 20 years of tenure? Inside the office, Principal Evans sat behind her desk, glasses perched on her nose, her expression a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. "What's this about, Clara?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Miss Thornton launched into her attack, her ruler tucked under her arm like a general's baton. "Brooks refused to sit, disrupted my class, and get this. Claims he solved a calculus problem meant for high schoolers." Her voice dripped with scorn. "He's a C student, Margaret, a C student. He must have memorized it from somewhere, trying to play hero." Principal Evans raised an eyebrow, glancing at Ethan, who stood clutching the math fortress like a shield. "Is this true, Ethan?" she asked. "Did you solve it?" "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said softly, his eyes on the floor. "I've been studying calculus on my own." Ms. Thornton scoffed, loud and theatrical. Studying calculus? At 13? Next he'll say he's building a rocket to Mars? She waved her ruler, nearly knocking over a coffee mug. This is academic dishonesty, plain and simple. Ethan's stomach twisted. He wanted to shout, "Check the board, it's right." But the torn paper, the welts, the weight of Ms. Thornton's authority, it all pressed down, suffocating his voice. "Why didn't you sit, Ethan?" Principal Evans asked, her tone gentler, her eyes searching his face. Ethan hesitated, the pain in his back flaring. My back hurts," he mumbled, avoiding Miss Thornton's icy glare. "Your back?" Miss Thornton's laugh was a whip crack. Another excuse, first cheating, now this sob story. "He's manipulating you, Margaret." Principal Evans frowned, her pen tapping the desk, tap tap, a slow, deliberate rhythm. "Clara, calm down," she said. "Ethan, explain, what's wrong with your back?" Before Ethan could answer, a knock interrupted, sharp and urgent. The door swung open and Ms. Lily Harper, the science teacher, poked her head in, her bright smile fading as she clocked the tension. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes darting from Ethan's pale face to Ms. Thornton's clenched ruler. "Just a disciplinary matter, Lily," Ms. Thornton said, her voice tight. "Nothing for the science department." Ms. Harper stepped inside, undeterred, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. "If it involves Ethan, it's my business," she said, crossing her arms. "He's one of my best students." "Best?" Miss Thornton snorted, her ruler twitching. "He's barely passing my class." Miss Harper's eyes narrowed, her smile sharpening into something fierce. "Maybe because your class bores him, Clara," she said, her voice cool. "Principal Evans, did you know Ethan's science project last year? Fractal patterns in nature? Won first place in the math category. It used calculus-level equations, stuff most high schoolers couldn't touch." Principal Evans blinked, her pen pausing mid-tap. "No, I didn't," she said, leaning forward. "Is this true, Ethan?" Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered, the math fortress heavy in his arms. Ms. Thornton's face flushed crimson, her ruler trembling. "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "He disrupted my class, cheated on a problem he couldn't possibly solve, and now he's spinning tales about his back." Miss Harper's gaze softened as she looked at Ethan, noticing the way he winced when he shifted his weight. "Ethan," she said, her voice gentle, like a warm blanket, "why can't you sit? Be honest." Ethan's heart raced, his back screaming, the welts burning under his shirt. The truth clawed at his throat. "She hit me! She hit me with that ruler." But Miss Thornton's glare was a warning, sharp as a blade. If he spoke, would anyone believe him? Or would her wrath bury him deeper? It just hurts," he said, his voice breaking, his eyes glued to the floor. Miss Harper stepped closer, her hand hovering near his shoulder, not touching, but close enough to feel like support. "Ethan," she said, softer now, "pain like that doesn't come from nothing. What happened?" Miss Thornton's ruler hit the desk, crack, making Ethan flinch. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "He's playing the victim to dodge punishment." Principal Evans raised a hand, her expression hardening. "Clara, enough," she said, her voice steel. "Ethan, I need the truth. Why does your back hurt?" Ethan's breath hitched, his fingers digging into the math fortress. The room felt smaller, the air thick with tension. Ms. Harper's eyes were kind, urging him forward. Miss Thornton's were daggers, daring him to speak. The torn paper, the calculus problem, the welts. It all swirled in his mind, a storm of secrets ready to break. Would he tell them about Ms. Thornton's ruler, the marks she'd left, or would he stay silent, letting her wrath win again? Ethan Brooks stood in Principal Margaret Evans' office, the air thick as molasses, his math fortress backpack slumped at his feet like a loyal if clumsy guard dog. Miss Clara Thornton's ruler twitched in her hand, her gray eyes boring into him like lasers. Miss Lily Harper, the science teacher, leaned forward, her voice soft but urgent. "Ethan, what happened to your back? Tell us the truth." Ethan's heart jackhammered, the welts on his lower back throbbing like a bad memory. The truth. Mrs. Thornton's ruler, her discipline for his sloppy posture last week, burned in his throat, but her glare screamed, "Speak, and you're toast." He swallowed, his voice a whisper. It just hurts. Principal Evans' pen stopped tapping, her glasses glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Ethan," she said, her tone firm but kind. "Pain like that has a cause. Show us." Miss Thornton's ruler hit the desk crack loud as a firecracker. "This is absurd," she shouted, her face flushing red. "He's faking to dodge his cheating scandal." "Clara, sit," Principal Evans snapped, her voice slicing through the room. "Ethan, please." Ethan's hands shook as he gripped the hem of his shirt. He didn't want to do this, didn't want their pity or Miss Thornton's wrath, but Miss Harper's eyes, warm and steady, urged him on. Slowly, he lifted his shirt, just enough to reveal the angry red welts crisscrossing his back, jagged lines like battle scars from a war nobody saw. Miss Harper gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, Ethan." Principal Evans stood, her chair scraping the floor, her face darkening like a storm cloud. "Who did this?" she demanded, her voice low, dangerous. Ethan lowered his shirt, his cheeks burning. "I fell," he lied, the words tasting like ash. He couldn't say it, not yet. "Fell?" Miss Harper's voice cracked, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Ethan, those are ruler marks." Ms. Thornton jumped up, her ruler clattering to the desk. "That's outrageous," she shouted, her voice shrill. "Those marks are from home, Margaret, his parents. A fight, anywhere but me. He's deflecting from his cheating." Principal Evans' jaw tightened, her gaze flicking to Ms. Thornton. "Clara, you're not helping yourself," she said, her tone icy. "Sit down." Miss Thornton froze, her face paling, but she sank into her chair, her ruler abandoned. Ethan's heart raced. Had he just lit a fuse? Principal Evans turned to Ethan, her expression softening. "Ethan, your math skills are under scrutiny too," she said. "Ms. Thornton claims you cheated on that calculus problem. I'm ordering a supervised test tomorrow morning, fair and square, to settle this. Agreed?" Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, ma'am." As Thornton's eyes narrowed, a snake sizing up prey. "I'll prepare the test," she said, her voice syrupy with false calm. "Problems from algebra to advanced calculus. Let's see if he's the genius he claims." Ms. Harper frowned, stepping forward. "With respect, Principal," she said, "maybe someone neutral should design it. No offense, Clara, but this feels personal." Miss Thornton's ruler twitched, her lips thinning. "Are you questioning my integrity?" she hissed. "I'm suggesting fairness," Miss Harper shot back, her smile sharp. "For Ethan's sake." Principal Evans raised a hand, silencing the room. "Clara, you'll submit the test to me tonight," she said. "I'll review it. No bias, no tricks. Understood?" Miss Thornton nodded, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Ethan's stomach twisted. Her look promised trouble. As they left the office, Ms. Harper squeezed Ethan's shoulder. "You did good, kid," she whispered. "We're not done yet." Ms. Thornton's heels clicked down the hall, her shadow long and menacing. Ethan clutched the math fortress, the welts pulsing, her parting glare burning into his memory. That evening, Ethan biked to Crestview Library, the spring air cool against his flushed face. The library's warm glow welcomed him, a safe haven from Miss Thornton's storm. Dr. Samuel Carter waited at their usual table, calculus textbooks splayed like battle plans, his salt and pepper beard twitching with a grin. "Heard you dropped a math bomb in class today," he said, his eyes twinkling behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Ready to prep for the encore?" Ethan slumped into a chair, the math fortress thudding to the floor. "It's a mess, Dr. Carter," he said, spilling the day's chaos. "The calculus triumph, the torn paper, the welts, the test. I'm scared. What if I choke tomorrow?" Dr. Carter leaned back, his smile fading into something softer, wiser. "When I was your age," he said, "I bombed a math contest because I let doubt creep in. Thought I wasn't good enough." He tapped a textbook, his voice warm. Math isn't about being perfect, Ethan. It's about telling a story with numbers. You're a storyteller, kid. Trust that. Ethan's chest loosened, a tiny smile tugging at his lips. A storyteller, huh? Best I've seen, Dr. Carter said, winking. Now, let's make those integrals sing. They dove into calculus, Dr. Carter sketching curves that danced across the page, substitutions, derivatives, a symphony of logic. Ethan's fear ebbed, his pencil flying as he solved problems, Dr. Carter nodding like a proud coach. That's my pattern whisperer, he said, his voice a warm blanket. As they worked, Ethan's mind wandered to the welts, to Ms. Thornton's desperation. Why was she so hell-bent on crushing him? What was she hiding? Focus, Ethan, Dr. Carter said, snapping him back. Tomorrow's your stage. Own it. They reviewed until the library's closing announcement crackled over the speakers. Ethan packed the math fortress, his confidence flickering like a candle in the wind. As he zipped his backpack, a folded note slipped out, fluttering to the floor. Ethan frowned, picking it up. Scrawled in hurried ink were 3 words. Don't trust Thornton. Ethan's blood chilled, his breath catching. I didn't write this, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Dr. Carter took the note, his brow furrowing. Someone's looking out for you, he said, his tone grave. Or warning you. He handed it back, his eyes serious. Keep your eyes open, Ethan. Thornton's not playing fair. Ethan stuffed the note in his pocket, his heart racing. Who'd slipped it into his backpack? Jake, with his guilty glances? Amara, with her quiet concern? Or someone else, lurking in the shadows? Dr. Carter walked him to the library door, the spring night crisp and starry. You're ready, Ethan, he said, his voice steady. Not just for the test, for whatever she throws at you. Trust your instincts. Ethan nodded. But as he biked home, the note burned in his pocket like a live wire. The welts on his back ached, a reminder of Ms. Thornton's cruelty. Tomorrow's test wasn't just about math. It was a battle. What trap was she planning? A rigged problem? Another accusation? He pedaled faster, the library fading behind him, Crestview Junior High looming in his mind like a dragon's lair. The note, the welts, Ms. Thornton's glare, they swirled in his head, a puzzle with missing pieces. Who was warning him, and what was Ms. Thornton scheming to bury his truth once and for all? Ethan Brooks sat in Crestview Junior High's conference room, the kind of sterile place where dreams went to argue with bureaucracy. The spring 2025 sunlight filtered through blinds, striping the table where a sealed envelope waited like a ticking bomb. Principal Margaret Evans, glasses low on her nose, slid the test to Ethan, her voice calm but firm. 2 hours, Ethan. Algebra to advanced calculus. Begin when you're ready. Miss Clara Thornton stood by the door, arms crossed, her ruler nowhere in sight but her glare sharp as ever. Ms. Lily Harper lingered outside, flashing Ethan a thumbs up that said, "You've got this, kid." Ethan's math fortress backpack slumped against the wall, a silent cheerleader. His back ached, the welts from Ms. Thornton's discipline pulsing, but he pushed it aside. Today was about numbers, not pain. He opened the packet, the paper crisp under his fingers. The first page was laughably easy. Linear equations he'd mastered when he was 9. His pencil flew, answers falling like dominoes in a satisfying clatter. Too simple, he muttered, flipping to page 2. Miss Thornton shifted, her heels clicking as she paced outside the glass door. Her lips moved, a whisper too soft to hear, but Miss Harper, perched on a bench with a science journal, tilted her head, catching fragments. Fix? He won't... Miss Harper's eyes narrowed, her journal forgotten. What was Thornton plotting? Ethan hit page 3, trigonometry. A bit spicier, but still in his wheelhouse. Dr. Samuel Carter's voice echoed in his mind. Math is a story, Ethan. Tell it bold. He grinned, sketching sine curves with flair, his confidence a warm glow. The welts faded to a dull hum, the room shrinking to just him and the numbers. Outside, Miss Thornton's pacing quickened, her muttering sharper. Miss Harper stood, edging closer to the door, her sneakers silent on the linoleum. "Clara," she called softly, testing, but Miss Thornton waved her off, her face tight. "Not now, Lily," she hissed, her eyes darting to Ethan. Page 4 loomed, pre-calculus, where things got serious. Ethan leaned forward, his pencil dancing through limits and sequences. He was in the zone, the math fortress proud in the corner. But a faint clatter snapped him out of it. A calculator, sleek and black, lay under the table, half hidden by a chair leg. Ethan frowned. He hadn't brought one. His heart skipped, the mysterious note from last night flashing in his mind. "Don't trust Thornton." He reached down, cautious, and picked it up. The screen flickered, preloaded with calculus formulas, integrals, derivatives, a cheat sheet glowing like a neon sign. A trap. "Principal Evans," Ethan called, his voice steady despite the jolt. Miss Thornton froze mid-pace, her head snapping toward the glass. Principal Evans stood, her chair scraping. "What's wrong, Ethan?" she asked, striding to his side. Ethan held up the calculator, its screen accusing. "This isn't mine," he said. "It was under the table." Principal Evans took it, her fingers brushing the buttons, the formulas blinked, blatant as a confession. Her jaw tightened, her eyes flicking to Ms. Thornton, who'd slipped into the room, her face pale as chalk. "Clara, explain this," Principal Evans said, her voice steel, cutting through the silence. Ms. Thornton's hands fluttered, her voice high. I don't know. He must have brought it, hidden it to cheat again." Ethan shook his head, his pulse racing. "You searched my bag," he said. "I didn't bring anything but pencils." Miss Harper stepped inside, her journal clutched like a shield. "I heard you muttering, Clara," she said, her tone cool. "Something about fixing the test. Care to share?" Miss Thornton's eyes widened, a cornered animal. "That's nonsense," she snapped. "Lily, you're twisting my words." Principal Evans raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough," she said. "Ethan, continue. I'll handle this." She pocketed the calculator, her gaze lingering on Ms. Thornton, who shrank back, her composure cracking like thin ice. Ethan exhaled, his focus returning to the test. Page 5. Calculus, the real beast. Differential equations stared him down, but Dr. Carter's training kicked in. He attacked, his pencil a sword, slicing through integrals with surgical precision. For one problem, he sketched two solutions, a standard substitution and a clever trigonometric trick, just to flex. Outside, Miss Harper cornered Miss Thornton by the vending machine, her voice low but fierce. "What's your game, Clara?" she asked. "Planting that calculator? You're scared he's better than you thought." Miss Thornton's laugh was brittle, her hands trembling. "Scared? Of a 13-year-old? Don't be ridiculous, Lily." But her eyes darted to the conference room, betraying her. Ethan hit the final problem, a monster, integral with nested functions. He grinned, recognizing it from a late-night library session. "Gotcha," he whispered, his pencil blazing. He finished with 40 minutes to spare, leaning back to double-check his work. Every answer gleamed, airtight and elegant. He set down his pencil, the soft clink of victory bell. The test was conquered, his truth inked on those pages, impossible to tear up. He glanced at the glass door, where Ms. Thornton stood, her face a storm of disbelief and something darker, desperation. Principal Evans collected the test, her expression unreadable. "I'll make copies for review," she said. "Miss Thornton, Miss Harper, you'll both get one. We'll meet at lunch to discuss." Ethan stood, his back protesting, but relief washed over him like a cool wave. He'd done it, nailed every problem, no tricks needed. Miss Harper met him at the door, her smile bright. "Proud of you, Ethan," she said, squeezing his shoulder. Miss Thornton lingered, her voice low as she passed. "Don't get cocky, Brooks," she muttered, her eyes glinting. "This isn't over." Ethan's relief faltered, the note's warning echoing. Don't trust Thornton. The calculator was one move. What was next? A fake grade? Another lie to bury him? As he grabbed the math fortress, students in the hall whispered, news of the test spreading like wildfire. Jake Miller leaned against a locker, watching Ethan with a mix of curiosity and guilt. Amara Patel passed, her shy smile a quiet cheer. Ethan headed to his next class, the tests weighed off his shoulders, but a new one settling in. Miss Thornton's desperation was a live wire, sparking danger. She'd tried to frame him once. Would she stop there? Or was she cooking up a final trick to snuff out his spark for good? Ethan Brooks stepped into Principal Margaret Evans' office at Crestview Junior High, his math fortress backpack slung over one shoulder, lighter now, as if it knew the storm was passing. The spring 2025 noon sun blazed outside, but inside the air crackled with tension. Ms. Clara Thornton sat rigid, clutching Ethan's test like a lifeline, her face tight as a drum. Ms. Lily Harper leaned against the wall, her smile a quiet cheer. Principal Evans gestured to a chair, a cushion on it, a small nod to Ethan's welts that warmed his heart. "Sit, Ethan," she said, her voice steady. "We've reviewed your test." Ethan eased onto the cushion, his back still tender but his nerves electric. Miss Thornton's glare burned, her ruler nowhere in sight but her fury loud as ever. Had he done enough? Or was she brewing one last trap? Principal Evans held up Ethan's test. Pages dense with neat equations. "Flawless," she said, her eyes wide with awe. "Every problem correct, Ethan. Multiple solutions for the calculus ones. Elegant, creative work." Ethan's breath caught, relief flooding him like a cool stream. Miss Harper clapped softly, her grin wide. "Told you, kid," she said, winking. Miss Thornton's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. "This proves nothing," she snapped, her hands trembling. "He was coached, illegally. Someone fed him those answers." "Coached?" Miss Harper laughed, sharp and short. "Clara, you wrote the test. Ethan aced it under your nose." Principal Evans raised a hand, her gaze pinning Miss Thornton. "Who do you claim coached him?" she asked, her tone cool. Miss Thornton's eyes darted, landing on a new target. "That professor, Carter. He's been sneaking him answers, I bet." A knock interrupted, firm and timely. The door opened, and Dr. Samuel Carter stepped in, his salt and pepper beard framing a calm smile. Ethan's heart leapt. "Dr. Carter," he blurted, unable to hide his grin. "Apologies for the intrusion," Dr. Carter said, adjusting his glasses. "I'm Samuel Carter, mathematics professor. I heard my name mentioned." Miss Thornton's face paled, her accusation crumbling. Principal Evans nodded. "Join us, Dr. Carter," she said. "Clara claims you coached Ethan improperly. Care to clarify?" Dr. Carter took a seat, his presence steady as an oak. "I've mentored Ethan for 6 months," he said, his voice warm but firm. "Not coached, mentored. He's a natural, solving problems most college students stumble on. His test?" He glanced at Ethan's pages, nodding. "Classic Ethan. Elegant logic, his signature." Miss Thornton sputtered, "That's absurd, a 13-year-old can't." "Enough," Principal Evans said, her voice steel. "Ethan's work speaks for itself." But the room wasn't done shaking. Amara Patel, shy as a shadow, stood trembling at the door, her phone clutched tight. I have something," she said, her voice barely audible. "Amara?" Ms. Harper said, stepping forward. "What's wrong?" Amara swallowed, her eyes flicking to Ethan, then to Principal Evans. "It's a video," she whispered, holding up her phone. "From last week. Jake recorded it." Ethan's stomach twisted. Jake Miller, the class clown who'd mocked him for months? What had he done? Amara tapped her screen, and the grainy footage played. Ms. Thornton's classroom. Ethan at the board, struggling with a problem. Her ruler flashed, striking his back. Once, twice. Ethan winced on screen, his face pale. The room froze, the sound of that crack echoing like thunder. Miss Harper gasped, her hand over her heart. Principal Evans' face darkened, her pen clattering to the desk. Miss Thornton's voice broke, shrill. "That's not... Someone edited it." "Editor," Dr. Carter said, his tone sharp. "That's you, Clara, clear as day." Ethan stared at the floor, the welts burning anew under his shirt. He hadn't wanted this. Everyone seeing his pain, his shame. But Amara's courage, her quiet stand, lit something in him. Principal Evans stood, her voice thunderous. "Clara, "You're suspended effective now," she said. "This goes to the school board. Ethan, I'm so sorry we failed you." Miss Thornton grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. "This is a witch hunt," she shouted, storming out, her heels clicking like a fading drumbeat. Ethan exhaled, the weight lifting, but the fight wasn't over. That evening, the school board meeting buzzed with outrage, the district hall packed to the rafters. Ethan sat with his parents, their hands gripping his, their faces a mix of anger and pride. Mr. Brooks, in his work boots, looked ready to tear down walls. Mrs. Brooks, still in her nurse's scrubs, wiped a tear. Principal Evans took the podium, her voice grave. "Ethan Brooks endured abuse and proved extraordinary talent," she said. "We failed him systemically. That ends tonight." Mr. Brooks stood, his voice raw. "My son suffered in silence because he didn't trust us to listen," he said, his eyes blazing. "Fix this, now." Miss Harper spoke next, her passion electric. "Ethan's a genius, but how many others are we missing? We need programs to find them, lift them up." Then Jake Miller shuffled to the mic, his usual swagger gone. I laughed at Ethan," he said, his voice cracking. "Thought it was funny when Ms. Thornton picked on him. I was wrong." He glanced at Ethan, guilt heavy in his eyes. "Sorry, man." Ethan nodded, a knot loosening in his chest. Jake's words, raw and real, bridged a gap he hadn't expected. Board President Daniel Hayes cleared his throat, the room hushing. "Based on evidence, Amara's video, witness statements, Ethan's test, Mrs. Thornton is terminated," he said, "effective immediately. We're banning physical discipline, launching gifted programs, and creating anonymous reporting for students. Ethan, we owe you an apology." Hayes looked at Ethan, his voice softening. "Would you say a few words?" Ethan froze, his heart pounding. Speak? In front of everyone? His parents squeezed his hands, their pride a quiet push. He stood, legs wobbly, and took the mic. "I just wanted to learn," he said, his voice shaky but clear. "Everyone deserves that chance, to be seen for who they are." The room erupted, applause washing over him like a warm wave. Ethan sat, his cheeks burning, but for once, it wasn't shame. It was hope. 3 months later, Crestview Junior High sparkled with change. Anti-bullying posters lined the halls, a new math club buzzed with eager kids, and Ethan, once invisible, stood at its heart. On a sunny Tuesday, he sat in the library, tutoring 6th graders like Amara, who grinned as he explained equations. "It's like a puzzle," he said, sketching a graph. "Find the pieces and it clicks." Amara's eyes lit up. "You make it fun," she said, her pencil flying. Miss Harper watched from a nearby table, her smile proud. "You're natural, Ethan," she said. "The university summer program? Dr. Carter says you're a shoo-in. You in?" Ethan nodded, his old fear of being seen fading like morning mist. "Yeah," he said. "I'm ready." His parents, now at every school event, waited outside in their truck, their laughter drifting through the window. Crestview's new sign gleamed at the entrance. "See every spark." Ethan walked past it, his math fortress bouncing, his heart full. He'd faced a dragon, Ms. Thornton's cruelty, and won, not just for himself but for every kid with a hidden light. So, what moved you? Ethan's grit? Amara's bravery? Drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe. Ring the bell to catch our next story tomorrow. Share this tale to keep every spark alive. Together, we can build a world where no child's genius goes unseen. Thank you for watching What's Your Spark?